So you may not have heard of Chinese manufacturer TCL before, especially if you're not really into your televisions, but the company has already started to cause a bit of a stir outside of its home country with its snazzy smartphone tech. And so now we have this stunning wee blighter here, the company's very first flagship mobile. It's called the TCL 10 Pro and it's considerably cheaper than most other flagship smartphones that you'll find out there, but is it worth sticking your SIM in? Well, I've been using it as my full-time personal handset and here's my in-depth TCL 10 Pro review. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. Now straight up, one of the best things about the 10 Pro is that uber sleek design. This handset looks better than some devices twice its price, with a symmetrical edge-to-edge construction and a neat tapered finish that's reminiscent of the Huawei P30 Pro. Not only does it look smart, but it's really comfortable to clutch as well. And yeah, while the only available colour is the rather boringly titled Ember Grey, that matte finish gives the TCL 10 Pro an almost metallic styling that stands out from the slew of glossy handsets. And sure, I would have appreciated a range of more vibrant colours to choose from, but I quite like the gradient style finish, it's quite attractive, and I also like the funky horizontal strip for the camera tech as well, which is perfectly flush with the surface of the phone. Sadly, there's no water resistance to speak of, but the TCL can take a bit of a splashing, and also after a week of use, a dinky little scratch has appeared on that arse end. But you do get this funky cover bundled in the box with the TCL 10 Pro if you want to keep your snazzy new smartphone covered up. And thankfully, so far touch wood, there is no scratching on the actual display. On the software side, it's full Android 10 with the TCL UI launcher squished on top. This tweaks the Android experience in quite a few ways, but most of them positive. For instance, there's a proper one-handed mode to shrink the TCL 10 Pro's display down, with the added bonus that you can actually customize the size of the active screen. There's also an always-on display feature with a choice of styles, and that serves up all the info you'll need, including what notifications are awaiting your attention. And of course, you get all the standard features that you'd expect packed inside the TCL 10 Pro as well. So for instance, a bit of NFC support for contactless payments, a bit of Bluetooth 5.0, dual-band Wi-Fi, all of that hotness. And you also have a bonus button here on the left edge, which TCL has named the Smart Key, and a quick push of that makes the Google Assistant pop up ready for action. Unfortunately, that Smart Key really ain't that smart, at least certainly not in my experience. At least 4 or 5 times a day I'll find myself accidentally calling up that assistant simply by picking up the phone or trying to unlock it and accidentally knocking that damn button. And sometimes it'll even activate when it's just sat in my pocket. And unfortunately, there's no way of changing the functionality of that button, and also you can't deactivate it completely unless you're playing a game. And while I'm busy griping about first world problem-y stuff, I also found that in-display fingerprint sensor could be rather slow at times. Quite often you'll find yourself waiting a couple of seconds for the phone to unlock, which doesn't really sound like much, but it does get quite tiresome if you unlock your phone every few minutes. Although you do also at least have a face unlock option, which will work perfectly fine as long as it ain't dark and you ain't wearing shades. And also, as much as I absolutely adore the design here on the TCL 10 Pro, I did find the fact that the screen curved around the edges of the phone meant occasionally my palms and my fingers would accidentally intrude on the display and select things that I definitely did not want to select. As far as I can tell, there's no software smarts to recognize any potential intrusion of palm flesh like you get on some rivals like Samsung's. And normally it's not really a problem because you can just kind of rest the phone in your palm so you're not having to touch the edges, but of course if you're lying in bed watching a video or something, then it's definitely an issue. I found myself skipping backwards and forwards through Netflix, YouTube videos, which was pretty tiresome after a while, about as much fun as a pineapple enema. Still, those little issues aside, I do really like this 6.47-inch AMOLED panel. Visuals are perfectly sharp thanks to the Full HD Plus resolution, and I love those poppy colours when you stick it in vivid mode. Animated movies and shows will definitely smack you right in the face with those vibrant hues. The TCL 10 Pro is also a winner for more cinematic fare thanks to its HDR10 Plus chops, which delivers really strong contrast. While there's even an upscaling tool to make standard dynamic range content look more natural. And this definitely does have an impact, whether you're just watching an SDR show on YouTube or a movie in Netflix. It's nothing revolutionary, but you will notice that details are boosted in darker scenes. As a quick example, check out this sign on the wall in Contagion and how much clearer it is with the feature active. And there are certainly no issues with brightness levels either. This thing hits around the 1000 nit mark when you're outdoors, so certainly visibility is not a problem. However, I did discover another funny little quirk as well, which is when I was watching a bit of Disney Plus at night, all tucked up with Teddy, I found that the eye comfort mode completely buggered the app up, so whenever I started streaming anything at all, I would just get a black screen. screen until I knocked off the eye comfort mode, and then everything was fine again. And let me tell you, that took a good bit of sleuthing to work out what was going on. For your audio, you get a mono speaker slapped on the bottom edge of the TCL 10 Pro, which is fine for watching some hands-free video or a quick Skype, but it's not the loudest, and I definitely recommend hooking up to a speaker or headphones when you can. So on to performance, and unlike many flagship smartphones, the TCL 10 Pro isn't powered by one of the top-end Qualcomm Snapdragon chipsets. Instead, what you get is the Snapdragon 675 packed inside here. And I think beyond the Moto Z4, there's not many phones that have come to the UK that actually use that chipset. I think a couple of mid-range Samsung and Vivos, and that's about it. But still, I found that the performance on the whole was absolutely alright, helped along a fair bit by the 6 gigs of RAM. The phone can be a wee bit lethargic at times, so for instance, loading up the camera app and switching to video can take a number of seconds, and that combined with the slow fingerprint sensor means that occasionally I'd go to shoot a quick movie of something cute happening, and of course by the time the camera was actually ready, the moment was gone. But these slow patches are pretty rare, and you can certainly smash through a good few games on stuff like PUBG Mobile, no worries at all. On HD levels, the game proved a perfectly smooth experience. I did struggle at times with the touch response using 2 thumbs at once, while the curved display isn't quite ideal to gaming, but I still enjoyed having my arse handed to me by annoying 10-year-olds with too much time on their hands. And you also have a nifty gaming mode here on the TCL 10 Pro as well to help block any of those pesky notifications and make sure that the game gets priority as far as network privileges go. Unfortunately, the features aren't as easy to access as they are on some rival smartphones from the likes of Xiaomi and Oppo, but it's still good to have. And no worries if you like to play a lot of games as well, because the TCL 10 Pro packs in a generous 128 gigs of storage, and that can be easily expanded up to a further 256 gigs using micro SD. Great to see. And no complaints with a 4500 mAh battery either, which will easily see you through a full day of action, unless you're doing a lot of Skyping or something. However, I did notice that the TCL 10 Pro's battery life continued to drain overnight, even with the likes of Do Not Disturb active, so you'll want to switch it off when you get to bed, unless you're going to be charging it up overnight. And while a lot of rivals now offer 50 or even 60 watt fast charging as well to get you fully powered up in just over half an hour, unfortunately it's Quick Charge 3.0 here on the TCL 10 Pro, so that'll take you a couple of hours to get a full charge from an empty battery. Now for this sort of price point, you can bag yourself some excellent camera phones these days, including the mighty Pixel 3a, so that quad lens rear setup has a lot to live up to. And what you get here is a 64 megapixel primary lens backed up by a 16 megapixel ultra wide angle, a 5 megapixel macro lens, and a 2 megapixel night video lens. I found that my test shots were sadly lacking in detail using the auto mode, which captures 16 meg photos with pixel binning, but you do have a dedicated 64 megapixel mode, which is great if you want sharper shots for checking out on a monitor or TV. And I was definitely impressed when taking pictures of moving subjects, with very few of my shots marred by blur, even when I was moving at the same time. Colours are punchy and bold rather than naturally reproduced, which some will enjoy and maybe others not so much. The macro mode is of course mostly pointless, even with that dedicated lens, but the portrait mode works really well, and you've got full control over the blur effect. The TCL 10 Pro's HDR smarts are pretty damn good as well. You'll have few troubles with oversaturation or murkiness when you're shooting against a bright background, although your subject can occasionally appear quite soft. In low light, things are a serious struggle however, and while the dedicated night mode does help to improve the detail and colour clarity, the results are often still quite fuzzy or grainy. Shooting video at the maximum 4K 30fps settings gives you some good looking home movies with very clear and loud audio pickup. It's even fairly robust in HDR situations if a wee bit flickery. And you can also use the wide angle lens to shoot video, but this drops the resolution to Full HD, and frankly the resultant footage tends to look quite flat. However, while the primary lens is once again a wee bit cack in low light situations, that special night video lens does an admirable job of capturing detail and colour in extremely dark scenarios. Quite impressive stuff. And around front, of course, you also have a 24 megapixel f2.0 selfie camera, and it's a similar story. Definitely does the job for a bit of Instagram action. And that right there is what I think of the TCL 10 Pro after using it as my full-time personal smartphone. There's definitely a lot to love in there. I particularly like the design, which can't really be beat around this sort of price point. It's got a gorgeous display as well, so media fans will definitely love it. Unfortunately, there are also a few little quirks that you sort of have to learn to live with the TCL 10 Pro as well, although hopefully some of those will be ironed out in software updates, so I'll try and get a long-term review of this bad boy on the go in a few months' time. So definitely please let us know what you think in the comments down below. Please do poke, subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a lovely week, people. Cheers, love you!